Hello everyone, Ruby Ravel here, seductive siren of the subconscious mind. Today we're going to talk about Venus in Pisces. Now just imagine that like Ulysses and his valiant gang of men, you are out floating on your ship on the beautiful Aegean. You have no idea really where you're going. You have been tossed back and forth by great surging waves of emotion, and you've also many times been becalmed. The wind has disappeared, and you have just been upon that crystalline sheet of expansive ocean with no real hope of land or groundedness in sight. And then, suddenly, as you pass a cluster of adjacent rocks, a small island, you hear the most beautiful sounds you ever heard in your life. It is truly the music, the very melodies and harmonies of the other world itself condensed into sonic form, the very sounds and tapestry of creation, of beauty and orgasmic delight. And after all your toils, after all your struggles and labors, this sound is a real balm to your soul. It fulfills you in ways you never knew it was possible to be fulfilled. It touches you in ways in which you've never been touched. It seems to cleanse you, to bathe you in sound, to the point where all of your stresses, all the accumulated tension just disappears and washes away, and you feel yourself to be cleansed, to be purged. And your only desire is to chase that music. Now that you have experienced that true divinity, that real kiss from the Godhead enveloping you, you want nothing more than to merge with it completely forever after. So you lose your senses. You let go of everything you've ever known, and you throw yourself in the water towards those beautiful sirens so that you can be enveloped for eternity in their song. And then, of course, the song disappears. Your ears are filled up with the water of the ocean, and you begin to drown in the infinity of the mysterious unconscious. So why am I talking about sirens and songs beyond the fact that I love exploring all that is mythopoeic and mythological and inserting a few stories and tales here and there? Because I feel that that tale is expressive of some of the highs of and lows, some of the divine euphoria and ecstasy, as well as, I guess, the polarized dysphoria that one can experience in the extremities of Pisces waters. The one fish pulling us towards life, towards total affirmation, towards all the fulfillment of experience, and the other that swims away into the dark depths of those abysmal waters where poisonous jellyfish and giant man-eating crabs lurk. So in medieval astrology, Venus in Pisces was considered to be its most exalted placement. And there are good reasons for feeling that Venus is exalted in these Piscean waters, because ultimately what Venus wants is to relate, to connect with someone else, and to find pleasure and fulfillment and happiness in that union we create through others. And many times that can be difficult because there is this apparent boundary that separates us from other people. There is this enclosed sense of self, this enclosed I. And then there is the enclosed I around the other with which you are hoping to form some kind of connection. And so many of the difficulties that we experience in relationships is navigating one another's boundaries, navigating the differences and the contradictions and the friction between all our values, which may meet and commingle in some places, but which may be totally polarized and antagonistic in others. If Venus in Pisces seems so attractive, is because it has that potentiality to completely to completely dissolve and melt away the illusion of those boundaries. And those boundaries are an illusion because on a quantum level, everything is just an oceanic sea of atoms. Everything is just music. Everything is pure sound. Everything is just vibration vibrating with itself in this ocean of experience. So once Venus comes to Pisces, it feels like all of these barriers that get in the way of loving people, all of these artificial human pettinesses, all the constructs of our ego that says no this, yes that, it all falls away. And instead, we can have this experience of divine rapture, of truly uniting and merging with another person, so that we're not certain where one of us ends and where the other begins. It is like the child returning to the womb so it can be one with its goddess mother. And this is reflective of what Venus in Pisces truly wants from love and what it truly wants from relationships. It wants to transcend all of the mediocrities and the small disappointments of embodied existence. It wants to experience the divine in love, to find God or the goddess in another person, for a celestial archetype to sing through your partner and nourish you and bring you back to the most childish, innocent, and purified sense of yourself. And I can relate to that. I would very much love to be in a relationship with a goddess. I would love for Venus herself to descend from the heavens and to nurture me and love me and protect me, to bring me under her bosom and to caress my hair with her soft hands that seem to be able to reach through and grab my soul itself. But when we're having a relationship with actual humans, things are much more difficult, because if we look at any of the myths that govern the many times in human mythological history where humans do have relationships with gods and divinities or fairies and otherworldly beings, they don't usually turn out very well for the human. In fact, the human often gets a short shrift, and what starts out as one of the most amazing experiences of their life can often end up in tragedy. And one of the stories that I think is very illustrative of this is from one of my favorite operas, Wagner's Lohengrin. And the story revolves around a beautiful, pure-hearted, almost saintly woman called Elsa von Brabant, who finds herself in the tricky situation where she is being accused of crimes she did not commit. And while she is being held accountable to these in a court attended by the king himself, she doesn't know what to say. She is being wrongfully dealt with by all of these insidious people who want to malign her and her reputation, even though she knows herself to be a pure and good person. And so, in a moment of desperation, she calls out to God in the hopes that he will send her some kind of living salvation that will rescue her from this difficult circumstance in which she finds herself. And we all experience those moments. We all have those times when we feel totally out to sea, where we are assailed by so many difficulties that we wish someone or something would be able to extricate us from, some higher power, someone with a wisdom and insight and a depth of heart greater than our own, that is just easily able to remove us from a situation that we can see no escape from. And because it's an opera, Elsa von Brabant initially gets lucky. After giving out this call when it almost seems like she is done for and she will be proclaimed guilty and suffer punishment thereof, suddenly this mysterious, otherworldly Grail knight appears, riding on a swan, and swans have often been symbols of the other world with their big, white, angelic wings. And this Grail knight, he's a hunk. He's everything you could possibly want in a man, if you're interested in men. He's muscular, he's heroic, he's noble, he's strong, he seems to be fearless and to be governed by principles that are far beyond the petty machinations of everyone else around him. And he says all the right things as well. He comes along and he says, Elsa, not only will I rescue you, not only will I take up your cause as my own in your hour of need, I will also wed you and you can become my wife. And if it just stopped there, then the opera wouldn't need to go beyond its first act. That would be perfect. The situation would be solved. Everything could go happily ever after. But that is not how things turn out. Because, as so often happens when gods come together with humans, there is some small print that has to be attended to. There are certain rules that cannot be transgressed if the relationship is to continue and prosper and be successful. And he says, I will marry you and be your husband, provided you ask me nothing about who I am or my former identity. Now, that's a pretty big clause, because basically what Elsa is being asked is to marry a mystery, to marry an enigma, to marry a total unknown. And there is some beauty in that, because when we first meet someone, when we first find a partner who seems like they could be ours forever and who could fulfill our hearts, we are coming into contact with this impossibility, with this figure who could change our lives forever, maybe for the better, maybe for the worse. We don't know. There are all these question marks hovering there like swarms of fairies and dragonflies. And for many people, that can actually be the most enjoyable part of a relationship then, because we don't know the person with whom we are going to bed, who is kissing us for the first time, who is entranced us with their beauty and their mystery. They become this canvas on which we can project all our fantasies, all our hopes, without fear of contradiction, because you can't be contradicted about the divinity and the perfection of something if you don't know it, warts and all. And that's basically what this Grail Knight is saying to Elsa. He is saying, remain ignorant of me and all my past, and all will be well forevermore. And at first, Elsa commits to this, and she seems willing to go along with it. She's a pure-hearted Christian woman. She knows what it is to have faith in a big unknown. But eventually her enemies see that this is the way to undo her, and they manipulate her, and they play upon all her doubts and fears, saying, how can you commit to someone you don't know? He could be anything. He could be a rapist, he could be a murderer, he could be an incel. You don't know anything about this guy, so maybe you should look through his internet history first before you commit to him. And over the push and pull of this big grand free act opera, eventually Elsa gives in. She is so assailed by these doubts that even though she knows it will potentially ruin her and the relationship that she is committed to, and which is potentially her salvation, she has to ask the knight, who are you? I need to know. I cannot go ahead with this unless you tell me who you are. And he does. He reveals himself to be Lohengrin, to be one of these knights of the Grail, but he has taken an oath that he cannot break. And by revealing all of this, the marriage is over, and her chances of happiness and salvation are ruined. And relationships from the Pisces, Venus in Pisces, do not have to play out of this, but it really brings to light the processes of illusion and disillusionment that occur when we are getting embroiled in a relationship with someone. You know, Venus in Pisces can really help us to see the divinity in someone else, and that is such a beautiful person. When someone seems to be sacred, when they seem to be this envoy from another world who has come along just to lift up our life and inspirit it with more magic and color, we are grateful for that person, because life can be grey, life can be dull, life can be tough. And when someone offers that sanctified refuge, when they can become a temple in which we can worship, a waters into which we can dive and see the most majestic of technicolor coral patterns, it's very hard not to want someone to be just that and nothing more, to want someone to be a solidified fantasy. The problem is that if we only permit someone to be that solidified fantasy, anytime they reveal any of their genuine humanity, any of their genuine human frailty, we are going to be disappointed, because suddenly now our fantasies can be contradicted. What we have projected onto that other person, the mask we projected onto that other person of the perfect partner, begins to slip. and the real human with problems, with difficulties, with frailties, with complexes, with addictions, with troublesome needs, all of those things become clear. And for many people can get into patterns of relationships, get into patterns where relationships don't go beyond this. They believe so much in the idea of this person being the one who can fulfill them forever without ever displeasing them, that the moment the smallest red flag arises, that's it. The relationship can go no further. That person obviously wasn't the right one for them, and they hop back in their boat looking for the next siren who will seduce them and tempt them to jump in their waters. To really love someone, I feel we have to be aware of both their reality and their mythology, and to understand that both of these things are a crucial part of someone. To love someone for their mythology and for their reality. But the thing is, Venus in Pisces really just wants to love the mythology. It would much rather that. Reality is so squalid, so petty, so small, so earthy, so disappointing. And it wants to run away from that as much as possible, very often. You know, the escapist fish that we all know and maybe love. And the same is true also of Venus-Neptune contacts and Venus in the 12th house, that these same patterns tend to emerge. And one of the best ways to enjoy the thrill and of love and romance is to, and to try and stave off disillusionment at all costs, is to love someone who is unavailable, to commit to an impossible romantic situation. And I see this playing out very much, and I have been guilty of it myself. You fall in love with someone perhaps who is committed in another relationship, so that you don't have to worry about actually committing to them. You can just feel that yearning, that passion for this thing that seems so wonderful, but because it's not quite available, you don't have to suffer the consequences of what it would be like to actually be in a proper relationship with that person, and to experience all of the boredom and dullness and tension that will inevitably rise in any kind of long-term relationship. Or there are other obstacles. You know, maybe that person lives far, far away. It's all about seeking a relationship that can't be consummated. Maybe you're a very sexual person, and yet you continue to attract people who are asexual or demisexual, or who for some reason are not physically available. It's easier to love an impossibility, because then you can't be disappointed by any mundane situations in a relationship. But beside that, though, there is also a deep yearning from Venus in Pisces to completely surrender itself to someone, to say, I have forsaken my own ego for you. I have sacrificed myself for you, and I am devoting myself to you as a disciple devotes themselves to a god. My whole life, my whole experience will be absorbed and fulfilled in you. And when to be the recipient of that kind of love is wonderful, but it's also placing you on a pedestal. It's depriving you, like I said, of being a human being, because instead you have the responsibility of being someone else's godhead. Everything you do, because there aren't those boundaries in place, because Pisces waters have dissolved them, everything you do affects that other person. Every small detail sends these oceanic ripples to them. And this is where the relationships of Venus and Pisces get complex, because there's that desire for that spiritual tantric union of the Shiva and Shakti coming together to fulfill a whole person. And that's beautiful and that's wonderful and profound, but also very difficult to achieve. But it can also descend just into pure codependence, where we end up building our whole lives around someone else. They become the citadel on which we construct the rest of our lives. And of course, people being people, that's a very unstable and uncertain and dangerous thing to do. And one moment we can be living in these castles in the clouds, and the next we find ourselves plummeting from the heavens, having lost everything. It is difficult to reconcile a search for love like this, for that divine homesickness that really wants a god and not a human being. Anyway, as you can see, Venus in Pisces is actually a very, very complex and nuanced placement. I feel like I could do a movie-length video about this subject alone. However, for the sake of some kind of neatness and structure, I'm going to stop this there, and I'm going to do other parts about Venus in Pisces over the coming days, so we can explore what its values are, and the different other ways it can manifest, and some of the other stories and legends that have a very Venus in Pisces quality to them. If you want to share any of your own Venus in Pisces stories, or just make comments in general, please do. I always love hearing from you. And like, share, and subscribe so that I can carry on doing this. And all my love to you from this Siren of the subconscious.